Welcome to episode 1 of the Purpose Pursuit podcast, the show that helps you find your purpose, focus on it, and build a life you're proud of, mentally, spiritually, financially, and physically. Today's guest is someone who embodies everything this podcast stands for. He's a man of faith, family, and focus, a husband, father, grandfather, successful entrepreneur, and a community leader. But his journey is what makes him truly remarkable. He's the ninth of 19 children, went from humble beginnings to financial freedom, and is here today to share his wisdom with us. So if you're lost, searching for your purpose, or looking for real actionable advice, this is the conversation you don't want to miss. So let's get into it with the incredible James Potts. Just kind of want to get into the backstory of who James is. Just right off the bat, you're the ninth of 19 children, which obviously I think that's pretty awesome. You don't really hear that big of a family this day and age, but
Right.
Can you just paint a picture of what it was like to grow up in such a big family?
Well, growing up, a lot of people said that we was poor, but we never knew it. And one of the reasons we never knew it is because of the faith that my mother and father had in God and the faith that they instilled in us. We went to church probably more than anyone. And so we had a foundation that was deeply rooted in God. And so if you have a foundation that's deeply rooted in God, and that's for anyone, you don't see yourself as an unprivileged person. You see yourself as a possibility that God is going to develop through you. And so you never takes the time to say, I'm poor, or I'm less privileged. So your question of me growing up in this family, it was a privilege, even to this day. All of my siblings, when we get together, we are counting the blessings that we have today that's deeply rooted and standing on the shoulders of my mother and father. So it was a blessing.
As I was getting things together, I was thinking the middle child, it's always something about the middle child, but you're like a super middle child. So how was that like growing up as the middle child of such a big family? Does that middle child thing kind of hold true, or was it okay?
No, it holds true because you have just as many sisters and brothers before you as you do behind you. And so you're constantly trying to find your place. And you are also not only just trying to find your place, but you're plotting your course at the same time. And so I had more sisters ahead of me than I had brothers. And so most of my brothers, it was just two brothers ahead of me. And then I had I had two brothers ahead of me, then all the remaining brothers was behind me. And so I was constantly tasked to give a path for the brothers that was coming behind me.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the things that fueled me to even go to college. I had a sister challenge me to say, hey, you out of high school, getting ready to leave high school, why not have a challenge for your brothers that's coming behind you? So being a middle child, you're going to always have challenges. You're going to have that possibility where you have to plot your own course outside of your, as they say, your squad.
Yeah.
But it's a joyful feeling.
A lot of people use humble beginnings as an excuse. What did your childhood teach you about hard work, faith, and finding purpose?
Well, faith and finding purpose and what it actually taught me. The first thing it taught me, we grew up, like I said earlier, we didn't say that we was poor. And we grew up, my brother and I, we was very close. We grew up mowing yards, picking pecans. We had a newspaper route. Most people don't know this, but most newspaper route, you're going to have one or two, maybe 10, 15, 20 customers and on 4, 5, 6 different streets. But we threw newspapers in 2 cities, and we had 513 customers. And we threw newspapers day and night. I mean, every day of the week except Saturday. And so we learned from an early age what work will actually mold you and shape you in.
Yeah.
And so, having faith, my mother and father, they didn't believe in running the streets. They didn't believe in cursing or skipping school or those things like that. So we had a base not only in faith, but in work ethics. And that work ethics is what fueled me into who I am today.
Okay. So essentially, that initial foundation growing up was kind of the building blocks to how
Correct.
you became who you are now.
Correct.
Okay. All right. You majored in computer science at Mississippi Valley State. I'm an Alcornite, so we kind of get along, but don't get along.
Oh, yeah, that's all good.
Yeah. What pushed you toward that field in computer science, and how did it shape your path early on?
That's a good question, Tim. I tell people all the time, when I first decided to go to college, I had a sister, and I was getting ready to leave high school. And in fact, the day, maybe the last few weeks before I was going to graduate from high school, the principal called us into the office, and I'll never forget it. I hadn't been in the principal office. Early on I was in there a lot, but in my latter days, my high school years, I never been in the principal office. Never was in trouble. So he called myself and 4 other guys into the office, and he called us all in, and he asked us what it is that we wanted to do when we graduated. One said that he was going to the military. 2 said that they was going to go and start working in a local factory. I was the only one that said that I was going to go off and go to college. And so I was the only one he told me that I can go ahead and leave. He told the person that was going to the military he can go ahead and leave. But the 2 that said that they was going to stay and go and work in the local factory there, he kept them. And neither of us knew that meant that we had a job already waiting on us. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, I decided to go to Mississippi Valley because my sister challenged me. She challenged me, as I said earlier. Why wouldn't you go to college and set an example for the brothers that you have coming after you? So I went to college. I always wanted to own my own business. From trying to own a Sonics drive-in to to trying to figure out how to own a trucking company. I mean, all of these things was from an early age in high school. And so I wouldn't plan on going to college. I was going to actually go directly into trying to make money and then own my own business. Mm-hmm. But she challenged me. And when I went to Mississippi Valley, the first thing I majored in was business administration. And after the first semester, I said, I don't need business administration to know how to run a business. I know how to run one already from just watching my mother run a 19 member family, how my mother and father actually ran it. I said, I know how to run a business. And so I need to major in a field where I can make a lot of money quickly and start my own business. So next semester, I chose the hardest field I felt I can make the most money out of, and that was computer science. And so I went ahead and majored in computer science, and as they say, the rest is history. I worked 20 years in computer engineering, and I started my own business as well.
You said that you always wanted to start a business. Did you have some inspiration while as a kid, as a youth? Did you see somebody running a business, or that's just something that was just ingrained in DNA?
Trust me, it was ingrained in me. My mother had the business skills. Mm-hmm. I grew up watching my mother not have a job, but made just as much money as my father on his job. She was a seamstress. She sold clothes for the whole town. But it instilled in not only me, but all of my sisters and brothers, a business mindset. You bought a product, you create it, and then you sell it. And so that's what business is all about. You find a need, and once you find a need, you supply it. Yeah. And that's what she was doing. And so I say to anyone, never let someone tell you what you cannot do. My father always instilled in us, he said, whatever you want to do, if you put your mind to it, you can achieve it. If you put your mind to it. You can't put your mind to it if you drunk half of the time. You can't put your mind to it if you high half of the time. Yeah. You can't put your mind to it if you're running with the wrong crowd. As someone once said that if you want to soar like an eagle, you can't run with turkeys. So I learned that as an early age watching my mother and father.
And you decided to pick the hardest skill. Did you pick the hardest skill because you felt that, hey, I can make a lot of money with this, or if it's hard, I got to be able to do something really good with this?
Well, I was the type of person that even to this day, I take every challenge as an opportunity to succeed. So I never looked at it as the hardest, as something that I couldn't do. Mm-hmm. I looked at it as something that I could make a lot of money in quickly, where I could own my own business. Because as I said earlier, at that point in time, my first sophomore year in college, I had went to 3 banks trying to get them to give me a loan to start a Sonics drive-in there across the street from Mississippi Valley State, where now a Sonics drive-in is located. So it wasn't my first time going to the bank. Hey, loan me some money, and being turned down because one, you don't have enough credit, or two, you don't have a good enough job, or three, you don't have any collateral. So I had went through that before. So I say one way to fix that is to make enough money where I don't need the bank money.
Gotcha.
I've built many, many, many homes. I own my own company. I rarely ever borrow money from the bank.
Yeah. So you kind of your own bank.
Exactly.
Gotcha. You worked over 20 years as a federal contractor and computer engineer. At what point did you realize you wanted more than a job, and what sparked that shift?
Well, sparking that shift was sparked in me years ago when I was throwing newspaper.
Mhm.
But as I continued to work, I knew I wanted to have something better. I didn't want to, I would sit at my desk 8, 9, 10 hours a day, emails in offices, flying all over the country for the government, in meetings. I knew it was something greater that I wanted to do than work for someone else.
Okay.
The best thing I can describe working for someone else is that's the best way to make someone else rich is you spend the rest of your life working for someone else. That's not going to make you rich. And so you have to learn how to get outside of working for someone and work and start working for yourself. So I always had that passion from birth. I mean, from childhood all the way up through college. And even when I started doing computer engineering, I still had it in the back of my head that I was making enough money to own my own business. And I had 2 sons that was coming up under me, and I wanted to show them that there was a better way than working for someone else. I wanted to be able to pass my business off to them. I wanted to be able to build a legacy that they understood, not only understood, but appreciated it. And so it fueled me to do more than just sit at a desk, program a computer, or whatever I was doing as an engineer.
There were other things that actually kind of gave you even more purpose. On one hand, it's, hey, I want to make something of myself. And you mentioned your sons. Then I would imagine that became another motivating factor for you to even drive harder.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yes, it did.
Was there a specific moment, a turning point where you said, I can't live like this anymore? I need to build my purpose. Tell me that story on how you got to that point.
I had been working as a computer engineer. I started in the private sector, and I probably worked 6 years in the private sector. And I felt like even at that point, I was 6 years into doing something that I didn't want to do. And then I was transitioned into working for the government as a contractor, computer engineer for the government. And every 3 years, my contract would end, and I would have to start working for a new company for the same project office, but just a new company. And somewhere along there, year 20, my contract changed hands, and it was difficult for me to transition to the next employer, the next contractor. Even I'll never forget this time. One guy, when it was time to change over, the new company wouldn't pick me up, and I went into his office. I said, "Hey, I don't understand it. I'm the best guy on the team. I'm like a manager. What is it? Why is it that you're taking everyone over to the new contract except me?" He beat it around the bush for probably 30 minutes. And finally, after I wouldn't just take no for an answer, he finally said, "Hey, I'm going to be honest with you. I can pay 3 peoples for what I pay you." I had gotten to that 6-figure salary where I was more expensible. I was expensive to him to the point where, in the sense of money. But to answer your question, I went home, and instead of continuing to work and look for a job and continuing to working in the engineering field, because I had other offers, but I just wouldn't accept them. My wife started telling me, she started saying, "Why don't you accept this? And why don't you go here? Why don't you go there?" But it was at that point I realized that I was 10 years into doing something that was not my purpose, that was not my desire. And at that point, I said, I turned and went right and did something totally different. And I hear a lot of people say, "What made you stop and step out on faith like that?" I stepped out on faith, the faith that God had given me, not only in Him, but I stepped out on the faith that I had in myself. That's the first thing that you have to have, faith in yourself. The Word of God say faith without works are dead. And he's talking about you can't please him without faith. But in order for you to do the things that you desire, when the things that you want to do in life, you have to have faith in yourself. If you don't have faith in yourself, no one else will. You have to be confident in what you do, what you say, and the plan that you'll put up and that you plan to execute. And if you have faith in that and you work toward it, you'll be successful in it. And that's what I've done.
You transitioned from employment to entrepreneurship with Potts Homes. How did you take that leap of faith, as you just mentioned? What were your first steps to do that?
Well, my first steps, and I tell anyone, I worked around the military. I was never in the military, but I worked with the military. I was one of their computer engineers. I was one of the guys that when you had one of the top secret weapon systems, that someone had to program it. Someone had to do the information assurance part of it. In other words, to make sure your enemy didn't break into the system and turn it against you or disable it. And one of the things that I learned from the military is whenever they get ready to fight a war, I don't care how far that war is, it can be in 2 continents over. The first thing they're going to do is, 1, draw up a plan. And 2, they're going to go to that area. Either they're going to buy the land, negotiate to use it for a while, or simply just take it. And they're going to set their military base up there. And then they're going to start to fight the war from that military base once they supply with all the ammunition. And so I took that same approach. When I decided to run a business, the first thing I had to do is come up with a plan. And second thing I had to do is come up with a military base. And third, start fighting it from there. And so in my point is I wanted to own my own business. I had started developing property. So the first thing I done was I had my military base. I built my first home. I built a $2 million home. At that time, it probably was a $500,000, $800,000 house. I built it, and I built it for I would say half of what it would actually value it at. That was my military base. Then I started to pull the equity out that home and build other homes. So to answer your question, not only did I have a plan, but the second thing, I had a military base to fight from. And when you have a military base to fight from, you have to be smart with your ammunition. You have to protect it. I didn't go out and start buying brand new cars. I didn't go out and start taking lavish trips and eating out everywhere and running up credit cards, having a lot of debt. I was very, very cautious with what I'd done with my ammunition. And so that's, you have to have a plan. To answer your question, I had to have a plan. I had to have a military base. And then I had to start executing the plan.
I kind of, believe it or not, I tell people something similar to that. Typically, you come up with an idea, right? And that's kind of where everything just go downhill. It just stays an idea. Well, in order to get past that, you got to come up with a plan. To actually make it happen, it's all about the execution.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like that. And then I've told people about the home base story.
Yeah.
And so I truly believe in that home base theory. And just to hear you kind of talk about it, how it came to be, certainly impactful to me. So you've built homes, you invested in markets, and now live off passive income. What mindset shifts had you had to take just to reach that financial freedom?
That's a good question you asked, Tim. And I would say one of the most important points that I would give in that aspect to anyone, debt, you have to figure out a way to eliminate debt. Of course, there's some good debt and there's some bad debt. The good debt is, I got a $100,000 loan, but I invested in a $500,000 piece of property, and it's bringing me residual income every month of $4,000 a month. But that $100,000 loan is only costing me $1,000, so I got a net $3,000 every month. That's a good loan. That's a good debt, rather. But I had to learn to become debt free. And once you learn to become debt free, you start living different. Sometimes I might put $20,000, $30,000 on a credit card a month, but I'm not going to put anything on a credit card that I'm not going to pay off at the end of the month. And when you learn to operate within your means, I don't care how small it is. You can have a Kool-Aid stand. You can have a hot dog stand. If you learn to operate within your means without debt, you would start to understand compound dividends instead of compound interest.
You referenced debt. Is that something that you necessarily had to overcome? And if it was, how did you go about over? Because a lot of people don't know about good debt and bad debt. People that I don't have no debt, so they always working to try to just have no debt. But A, how did you overcome the debt that you may have had, and B, how did you shift that mindset to, okay, I want to only operate with the good debt?
The first thing is, some people that may be listening to this is married. They may be married. Some may be single. If you are married, you have to learn to get everyone on the same page. Your wife can't be going left and you going right. You saving and she's spending. If you're single, you have to learn how to live within your means and not how your boys want you to live. You have to learn how not to go out and you decide to eat in. You have to learn how to understand what your path and your plan is. And in order to do that, you have to understand that debt is an enemy to your plan. And you have to learn how to eliminate that debt. And so when you eliminate that debt, you'll start operating in positive income at all times. And so when you start investing, you're going to start understanding that there are some good debt and bad debt. You're going to start understanding the power of making money and the power of money making money. Yeah. And when you get to that point where you start understanding money making money and the power of having zero debt, then you're going to understand the difference between good debt and bad debt.
So you said the power of money making money. So the goal is to eventually convert yourself from trading your time to make money to have your money making money to eventually recoup your time.
Exactly.
I like that.
At some point, you're going to have to get to the point where your money is sweating and you
are not.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Took the words out of my mouth.
So you're deeply rooted in faith.
Yes.
How has your foundation influenced you towards your success in business and life?
It's deeply rooted in everything that I do. I'm deeply rooted in God, Jesus, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I understood that from an early age. But to answer your question, I remember when I came out of college, got married, had a broken marriage, single parent, and everything that I had tried to do had failed. And I remember sitting in Sunday school one morning, and I forgot what the Sunday school lesson was about, but it was about tithing and offering, and I forget the scriptures, losing me in my throat now, but it was about tithes and offering, and the scripture was saying, "Try me." God was saying, "Try me" in the scripture, and He was saying that if you pay your tithes and offering, that He will open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that you wouldn't have room to receive it. And that particular day, my life changed because I said that not only do I know who God is, but I believe God. And so at that point, I started living for God. And not only did I start living for God, I started paying my tithes, paying offering faithfully. And I began to be blessed by God simply because of His word. And as they say, the rest is history. The very next week, I got one of the best jobs offers that I had ever had. And from that particular job offer, every other computer job I ever had, every other computer engineering job I had stems from that particular opportunity. When I started trusting God, when I started believing what He said in His word.
You reference, offering and tithes. Now, for some, that's kind of hard to give at church, right?
Right.
They work hard and they want to hold on to that last little bit, but was that something that was just rooted in you? Is that something that you learned on your own, or how did you come to just give so I guess easily without even giving it a second thought?
Well, like I said, we grew up in the faith from 402 Slim Street, my home, my mother and father. But as I got older, I ventured off and did my own things. But I still had that training, that home training in me. I still had the fear of God in me. And it didn't take much for me to know that after I had gotten so far off into the weeds in life, I knew where the old landmark was. And when I went back to that old landmark, it made it easy for me to understand, which I already had in me. It made it very easy for me to understand the purpose of what God is in your life and the direction that he can direct you in. And then when you start talking about money, a lot of people think money in church is bad, but it's not. God said money answers all things. And a lot of people say money is the root of all evil, but that's not what the scripture says. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. So you can take money and do good. You need money. Everything down here, you need money to operate. So that's why I say money answers all things. So I wasn't afraid to say, okay, God, I'm going to trust you. You said if I do this, you would do that. And so I started saying, well, this is God. This is the man that created heaven and earth. This is the man that created all the seas and the water dumps off into each other and it never overflows. This is the man that created heaven and earth and all the stars. And here he is asking me, telling me, prove him. In other words, he's saying, try me. That's what that means. Try me. You do this and try me. Watch and see will I do this. And so I said, okay, I'm going to try you. And from that day on, that's been 35 years ago, I've been trying him. And he still hadn't failed me yet.
What were the biggest obstacles you faced in pursuing your purpose, and how did you overcome them?
The biggest obstacle being a black male from Indianola, Mississippi, that wasn't didn't have the proper education that I should have had because I didn't go to a private Ivy League school. The biggest obstacle was first having to educate myself, and two, having to overcome racism. And you notice I said racism second, not first. I don't care how much racism you face. If you educate yourself, you can overcome anything. So my two biggest obstacles was education, and I achieved that. I went through high school, I went through college, I picked the hardest course, I educated myself. But the second thing that I had to get over was racism. No matter where I went, I faced racism. Whether it was on the smallest job, the most sophisticated jobs, even the top secret jobs that I obtained, I still had to deal with racism. But the answer to your question is, how do you not let that hold you back, and how do you achieve what you're trying to do? I never forget, I was at my brother's, one of my younger brother's commencement gathering at Jackson State University, and the gentleman was giving the commencement speech. And he said something that have stuck with me even to this day, and that was 20, 30 years ago. He said, every black man is not for you, and every white person is not against you. I took that with me because I've had a lot of white people, white men's, white women's, stick their neck out and help me. And I've had a lot of black people stuck their feet out, put their feet out, trip me, stab me in the back, whatever they could do to slow me down. But I had it on both sides, is basically is what I'm trying to tell you. And so those were my two biggest obstacles. But you, just like I said earlier, in order to overcome these two greatest obstacles, you have to go back to what I said earlier. You have to have faith in yourself. If you don't have faith in yourself, you will fail. You have to have faith in yourself to overcome those two obstacles.
To that point, we all the tripping and the falling and the bit stabbed in the back. Did you have that support system that you can go back to, that you can open up to? Like who did you share your lowest moment with to kind of get through those times?
That's a good question. And I'll say this, everyone needs a mentor, whether it's a father, a sister, a brother, or whether it's a brother in the faith, or whether it's just a close friend. And I had a gentleman that I didn't grow up with. I met him once I moved to Huntsville. He wasn't in the church. He wasn't a deacon. He didn't profess to know God, but he was honest. He was straight up. He understood not only business and had an education, but he had a mind to help his brother. And when you have someone that's not trying to hold you down, that's trying to impart as much as they can impart in you, and he was 10, 15 years older than me. And he told me a whole lot of things that I done. And he told me a whole lot of things that I wouldn't do. But over the years, I came back and said, Mike, he was right. And so by having a mentor makes the difference. And that's what we as black males, whether not just if you're a black male, just male, period. You can be a white male, Asian male, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Find someone to mentor, not just someone that's in a single family home, but find someone on the football team. Find someone that's in the volleyball, on the volleyball team. Find someone in Sunday school. Find someone that you can mentor and impart value into their lives that they are currently not receiving.
Gotcha. You've witnessed in the jail ministry, served as Sunday school superintendent, and are now a trustee. How has serving others shaped your life and your purpose?
It has changed my life because it's just like when you have a child. Before you have a child, it's just you. You're ripping and running. You're doing your own thing. But then when you have a child, you start to understand that you have somebody that you need to take care of that can't take care of themselves. And so once I started serving in the church, I started realizing that it was something bigger than me. If God chose me to serve in the church, that meant that he wanted me to do a work for him. And so once I started doing that work, it started giving me a purpose. It started giving me something far greater important than owning, making another $1 million. That wasn't going to change much. But once I started being the Sunday school superintendent, once I started talking to guys in the jail ministry that was down and out, and people that counted them out, and someone that I could talk to and impart not only knowledge into their minds, but godly experience and godly faith into their lives, you can start seeing where you was actually helping the human race, not just helping yourself. And when you start understanding that everything that you do is not centered around yourself, that's when you start to get self-gratification.
So it takes me to young men in general. A lot of young men struggle with distractions and excuses. What's your advice to someone who feels lost, stuck, or unsure of the next move?
The first thing that I would say for that person is you have to check your surroundings. I was never the type of person that had a large gathering, travel with a large posse. And I've always said that you're going to have two types of people around you. You're going to either have a friend or enemy. And you're going to have a lot of distractions. You're in college, you got a lot of distractions. Hey, you're a guy, you got the ladies. You have the guys want to go to the club. You have a lot of distractions. But you as a male, you as a female, whatever it is, you have to understand what's your purpose. When I say your purpose, what it is in life that you want to achieve. When you go to college, you say, I'm a major in X, Y, Z. So you feel like that's what you want to do in life. So you know what your purpose is. And so you need to understand that you're going to have enemies around you and you're going to have friends around you. And those are your distractions. And you have to understand that if you have an enemy around you, you need to learn how to evaluate those enemies. And because a lot of people, when I say evaluate them, I mean whether they are enemy to you now or whether they are enemy to you later. Because some people is an enemy to you today, but may be a friend to you later. And so you have to learn how to evaluate them and turn them off as to keep them from being as a distraction to you. And so when you start eliminating enemies from around you and getting that distraction from around you, and you start focusing on your plan and your future that you've already driven for yourself, then you'll start being more focused.
Is it wise to align yourself with those that are kind of going down that same path as you? Not necessarily. You use the example of major, but just in general, just your purpose. Is it just wise to allow yourself for people kind of heading down that same path to kind of minimize those distractions?
Sometimes it is. When you're in college, and when I was in college, I was a computer science programmer. And when I went to the programming lab, it was only computer programming guys in there, ladies in there. And we would help each other do our programs. There was no need for me to go to the accounting department. There was no need for me to go to the science department. So yeah, it's a benefit to run with people that's going in the same direction that you're going, that's in the same major that you have. But the primary goal is to run with people, to have friends and associate with people that have like-minded. They may not be in the same major, but they're not clubbing every night, getting high and drunk, every day. They are people that has a purpose. One of them may want to be a doctor. One of them may want to be a lawyer. One of them may want to be the president. So they are living their lives and training their minds and preparing themselves for a career. That's totally different from someone that's saying, hey, I don't want to go to high school. I'm going to drop out. I'm going to start stealing and robbing and killing and doing. Those guys, you grow up with some guys. I have friends right now that I went to high school with, and they are bang bangers. I didn't run with them. I stopped running with those guys. I started going with people that was going to college, want to own their own business. So yes, it's very important, to answer your question, to start to align yourself with people that have the same mindset, that want to have something in life. Some people, you talk to some of your friends, it would amaze you where they say, hey, I don't want to own no house. I don't want the headaches. I don't want the responsibility. If I get a house, then I got to get a job. If I get a job, now I got to get up every morning. I can't get up when their mindset is different. They have a different perspective on life. And so why would I run with someone like that? And I want to own my own business. I want to go to college. And so at some point in your life, you have to understand that some people's around you are an enemy and some of them are a friend.
Better to run with or surround yourself with not necessarily people in your field of expertise, but like-minded individuals in a plethora of expertise.
Exactly. And I go back to what I said earlier. If you want to learn how to soar like an eagle in this world, you cannot run with turkeys. Turkeys and eagles don't run together.
You wore many hats: employee, entrepreneur, husband, father, grandfather, community leader. How do you balance it all, and how do you stay true to your purpose?
That's a loaded question. How do you stay true to your purpose in the midst of everything that you have on your plate? In the beginning, it's family. It's God, family, and then purpose. And once you put God first, once you start to say, okay, I understand God has a purpose for my life. And after you understand that you as a man, you have to provide for your family. God has provided a way for you to provide for your family. Once you understand that, and then you start understanding, okay, my purpose in life, what it is that I want to do in life. I want to own my own business. I want to play professional golf. These things that you have aligned that you want to do. Once you run them through the filter of God and what it is that he have you doing, what it is that he wants you to do. And once you start doing that, that's going to allow you to satisfy your family home. Because there are a lot of things that you as a male have to do for your family that comes through God. One of the greatest things that a male could do is take his family to Sunday school. One of the greatest things that any man can do, the greatest thing that I think a man can do is take his family to Sunday school. Once you do that, I ain't saying send them to Sunday school. I ain't saying put them on the bus and the church bus come pick them up. I'm saying you get up in the morning, get your kids ready, and take them to Sunday school. God has a purpose for them and you. And once you start taking care of God's purpose and taking care of your family purpose, your purpose in life is going to fall in place.
For the person watching who's lost right now, what steps can they take to start finding their purpose?
The first step I would say is, regardless of where you are, you might be listening to this podcast riding down the road. You might be listening to it sitting in a jail cell. You might be listening to it and you and your girlfriend just finished fighting and you sitting in your car and you sitting here listening to a podcast. Here we are talking and you got all this calamity going on in your life and you trying to figure out which direction that you should go next. It's basically what you're saying. The first step that you have to take. I'm not a preacher, but I do know the importance of God and the word of God. The first step that you must take, you must come to God and ask God to lead and guide you. No matter what I tell you, it's going to be a different flight for you, be a different flight for this other person, be a different flight for this other young lady. But you have to stop and say, okay, God, I've been trying everything my way. Now I need you to help me. I need you to guide me. A lot of people is afraid to ask God that because they like, hey, God might tell me to do this and I don't want to do it. But God is not going to put anything on you that you cannot bear. And at some point in my life, I had to stop and say, okay, God, I've tried it my way. Which way is it that you want me to go? I've chose my wife and I chose the wrong one. Help me choose the right one the next time. I went to school, I've made a lot of money, and I've lost it all. Now, God, here I am, finna start all over again. Help me earn this money back and show me what to do with it. You have to start by asking God to lead and guide you in whatever step that you choose to take.
What high value habits or disciplines would you say helped you the most down your journey?
I would say that the primary one that I had was I had a lot of values in listening to older people. I grew up, I rarely ever, I never had a lot of people around me, only one or two people, and they was always much older than me. And so I had whoever I would run with, it was a person that was 15, 20 years older than me. And it wasn't someone that was running the streets. It was someone that was imparting a lot of knowledge into me. So I had those type of values that I think helped me get to the point in life where I am today.
You're living proof of purpose, meeting success. What does building a legacy mean to you, and how can others start to do the same?
I think if you're going to build a legacy, first you have to understand what a legacy is. That's something that you want to leave behind, far greater than what you are, even when you're gone, when you're no longer present, that it still exists. It's still turning out positive things in life. A lot of people like to leave that in their kids. They like to, have a business or something of that nature, and they give it to their kids, and it gives them financial security, legacy in that sense. My mother and father, grandparents passed down homes, land, and things of that nature. And we say that, once we go out to the farm or go to the home, this is the legacy that our father left us. But one of the greatest legacy that I think, and I keep going back to it, is the faith that you can leave uh, to your children and your grandkids. Um, if you start to leave that legacy to them, they will never, ever fail. I've gone to 2 home dedications in the past 2 days. $500,000 home dedication, sister, niece. And I'm constantly seeing that legacy that my mother and father left. And that legacy that they left was the fear of God. That legacy that they left is understanding God's word, living according to it. And once you start to leave that type of legacy, all the other things come. All those other things comes along with understanding God's purpose for you, understanding God's power around you, depending on God. And once you start doing that, that legacy that so many people speak of, it would take care of itself.
If you can go back and tell your younger self something, what advice would you give your younger self?
uh, 2 things, and I'm gonna just be honest with you. One, not jump out of so many windows in college. As a man, we look at females as an object, and so often I think we miss our opportunity for true love. And we are so busy chasing the cookie, as they say, and not actually understanding the purpose. And so if I was gonna go back and talk to a young James Potts, I would say not chase the cookie so much, but understand the purpose.
Mm.
And not only that, turn your life over to God far sooner than what I did. Because I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes before I started to trust God and started to make better decisions in my life that has landed me to where I am today. If I was still living the life that I was living, from all the way up to 25, almost 30 years old, I wouldn't be here today. I'd probably be in the grave.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those are the two things. So often we as men, we chase the cookie instead of understanding the purpose.
If you had one message to leave with our audience, what's that one thing that they need to take away from this conversation today?
I often say males because I'm a male, but when you say audience, I hope a lady is looking. I hope a man is looking. It doesn't matter the sex. One of the things that I would want them to take away from it is understanding that no one is going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. You have to learn how to trust yourself. You have to have faith in yourself. And you have to get up and make a plan for yourself. And the other thing I would say is there are so many things in this world that we could be doing. But if we stop to take the time to find out the one that fits us, the one that fits us, it might not be the most glamorous one. Someone, you might be the best ditch digger, and you can become a millionaire digging a ditch. You might be the best hairdresser, and you can become a millionaire being a hairdresser. You might be the best painter, the best bricker, the best concrete guy. You might be the best guy to go to if you want to have advertising done. You have to find what it is in life that fits you that you are able to do better than anyone. Most of the time, that thing is going to come to you naturally. You don't even have to do a whole lot of work to do it. Find that thing in life and focus on it. Not because someone told you, not because you're trying to be like someone else, not because that's all glamorous, or this or that. You might be a housekeeper. You're the greatest housekeeper. There are a lot of millionaire housekeepers. They have a lot of people working for them. We get so caught up in the glamour of the position and not understanding the purpose.
So if you find yourself constantly drawn to it, that's at least in that season,
Right.
or seasons, that's probably what your purpose is, and kind of really focus on that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That kind of brings us to the end of our conversation today. Certainly was a good conversation. I learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot about you and learned some more. So I really appreciate it. Definitely, I think can be really productive towards those that are watching and listening. And certainly appreciate you blessing us with your presence today.
It was my honor. I'm proud of you, brother.
I appreciate it. Hey, you guys paved the way, man. I promise you did. You just don't know how much I look up to you guys.
You remind me of a little James Potts.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not little, but I'm just saying when I was your age,
Yeah,
you go getter, man.
yeah.
It's gonna pay off.
It's in the DNA.
Hey, there you go.
Look, you talk about your moms.
Yeah,
My grandmother.
there it is.
You know, I remember the sewing. I remember the getting up early on Saturdays, going up and selling things to people coming by. So
The garden.
the garden, I was amazed at how much money she made on one Saturday.
Yeah, yeah.
Just selling stuff that she made.
Right.
Think about the net income, because that
Right.
stuff didn't cost much to
Right.
buy, put together, and how. Oh my goodness.
Had a skill.
Oh my goodness. So it's all about the skill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's I often talk to young men, and I often tell them, try to find you a high paying skill.
Mhm.
College is good. If
Right.
you want to go to college, it's great.
Right.
But if you kind of want to eliminate some of that debt on the front end,
Yeah.
get into something that's going to be high paying.
Yeah.
And if you can do an apprenticeship while doing it,
Right.
now you kind of own to something.
Right.
So, hopefully, somewhere in the future, we can kind of do this again. What a powerful episode. James just gave us the blueprint: faith, focus, and the courage to chase purpose. If you're lost, stop waiting and start building. Here's your challenge. Take one step this week toward your purpose. Whether it's reading, planning, or cutting out distractions, just move. If this episode hit you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with Tim Batts, because we're just getting started. To all of you out there, remember, your purpose won't chase you. You have to go after it. Now go build a life you're proud of.